So welcome everybody to another edition of Table Talks. Today, I'm in conversation with Brandy Osborne. In her 15-year career as a nationally certified sports massage therapist, the CSMTA, and a registered massage therapist, Brandy has pursued her passion of treating all sports with a focus and dedication towards hockey. In fact, she's treated at least one player from every team in the NHL, and over the last 7 years has worked extensively with Hockey Canada, the most recent event being a therapist to the senior women's team at the Worlds in Finland. You'll often find Brandy in leadership roles such as Lead Practitioner with Cirque de Soleil, Games, National Gymnastics Championship, and the BC Winter Games, and the list goes on. Brandy spent 10 years representing the members on the BC Provincial Board of the CSMTA, hosting 2 national sports medicine conferences, and now, most recently, the founder of the Elemental Being. But before I get into the Elemental Being, which we will get into, welcome, Brandy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I just wanted to say it's truly a gift to, when anyone ever asks you to do an interview like this or have this opportunity, it's a gift of just going back in time. And you had mentioned that you felt like this was my calling, we're messaging, and you know, I had a moment of like, is this our calling, or is this my calling? And just going back through time and going through it all really made me realize, like, yes, I love what I do. I love where I'm at. I love who I am right now and kind of what I feel like I'm giving to the world. And it just is nice to have that pause of just kind of going back and reflecting on it.
Reflection, yeah. I mean, we talked a while ago last week, I think, and yeah, you've done so much, but it was the way you spoke about it that I woke up, I think, a day or two later, or a few days later, and realized this is less of a job, less of a profession, and more of a calling. By the way you spoke about it, and you were drawn toward it. But let's go back and tell me a little bit more about how you became, well, the sports massage therapist. I mean, you must have become a therapist and then continued on, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah, pretty much. How I became a massage therapist was interesting, and it's kind of how I live life, where you're just kind of living in the moment with no clear plan, just making sure you're loving what you're doing. And I guess just like anyone, and probably a lot of people on this call are listening to this, it was kind of an uncomfortable experience that cracked me open and really opened my mind to the idea of going to college, because I was 24, 25, and I was actually working, you know, a job that I really liked, but again, something happened that all of a sudden stretched my mind, and a friend of mine created this opportunity to go to do like a shadowing at a clinic. And I didn't even know what massage therapy was. I knew I had a keen obsession about the human body and everything about it. And it was interesting because a conversation I had, I cannot remember the exact name of the therapist, and but anyways, she had kind of explained this what seemed like traumatic story around how she became a massage therapist and how hard it was, and how it was the hardest thing that she had ever done, but it also became a story of triumph. She obviously was there and doing it. And I think one thing that my parents have always instilled in me when I look back at it is, you know, like they weren't afraid of hard work. And it was always like, always be the hardest worker in the room. And working hard created opportunities, created growth and experience. And we never looked at that, you know, and this relates to becoming a sport massage therapist as well and working at all these events. Like we never looked at what looked like work as work. We looked at it as this amazing opportunity that only you're receiving in this moment. And it's that quote that most people miss opportunities because it's dressed in overalls and looks like hard work. It's that kind of thing, right? But anyways, for whatever reason, in that moment, I was like, yes, I want to do this. Like, it just sounded amazing. And then I fell in love with it in the end of first year with my I'll talk a little bit about Henriette Hall, who did the sport massage therapy class. And it was just like a glimpse of it at the end of first year. But really, it was second year where we started realizing what we were going to be able to or how we were going to be able to help patients, you know. But anyways, I guess just also talking about meeting this amazing woman, Henriette Hall, who had so much passion that when she talked, she actually spat at you. Like, I was always in the front row and she'd always be like, "Oh, sorry, Brandy." And I was like, "I don't even care. Like, you can spit on me." I was just excited about her passion around sports and her passion for life, you know? Yeah. And everyone in the room, you know, they ask you if you want to work with athletes. Of course, I was one of those people that was like, yeah, me, I want to. But really the flow and the magic and the creativity and in the momentness of sport massage just like drew me in, and it just felt so right. Like it was so, you're very much like flowing with the athlete, and it's that whole helping them upregulate for an event or downregulate, and it involves breathing and movement, and it's really artistic when I look at it. And when you look at someone that's proficient and has done it for years, it's kind of a magical thing to watch them, because they're not thinking, they're receiving input and they're acting in that moment, kind of like, I guess, an athlete would after years of practice. They are just able to perform, you know? So anyways, I fell in love with it, everything about it. And in that moment, I had this like quick vision of I wanted to work with our Hockey Canada, like our senior women on the Hockey Canada. And I just remember this like crystal clear vision, and then this knowingness of like, it's not the time. So kind of putting that on the shelf unconsciously, knowing that it's not the time. And eventually I got there, but not with a true direction to get there. But anyways, as soon as I was done getting my registration, I right away, and it was Henriette Hall that talked about the Canadian Sport Massage Therapy Association and how you could work with Olympic athletes, and anyways, and that there's a 5-year process really to get there. So as soon as I was done, I went through all the application process and started that journey. It
didn't faze you at all? Like, I just went through 3 years or 3,000 hours of school, and now I'm going to go more?
No, I was just like, really, what would I say? Like, it's just like that wild love for learning, and just like wanting to know more, and that curiosity of, it's not pressure, and it didn't stress me. It's just like, I'm just curious. Like, I want more. I know there's more layers and layers and layers. And I had this feeling that this was going to be that support on gaining those layers. Yeah. And someone within the organization right away, Christy Wilshire, who's now in Ontario, she was the president of BC at the time, and she basically was like, "Oh, you do really good as I was in Kamloops at the time, the Thompson-Nicola coordinator," and that's how I ended up getting on. And then slowly I just ended up taking on each role, and it really helped me just dive deep into sport therapy and just be surrounded by the right people, right? Like, that's the key to success in life, is who's in the room with you in that moment, and are you growing together?
Can I just ask, what's I mean, aside from those extra 5 years, what's the difference between the training of being a registered massage therapist and being a nationally certified sports massage therapist? Like, not anyone can call themselves a sports massage therapist. No, it is. It's literally a 5-year journey, and it's just like sport physio and sport chiro. It's a very specific journey around working with all different athletes, like contact, non-contact, group events, organizing events. So it's all of those avenues. So you have to record it, they have to sign it, like there has to be someone there saying that you were there and you did it. It doesn't have to be volunteer, it could be a paid opportunity for sure. But it's that, but really, if I didn't have that expectation of me, I wouldn't have worked with my first junior B hockey team in like I became registered October of 2008, and really as of November, December, this opportunity came up, and I was like, well, I got to get these hours, and it's a good opportunity, you know. But you also, there's specific courses on sports psychology, sport physiology, sport injury management, taping, bracing,
sport first responders. So you have to have all of these things as well. And then it's, you know, it's a practical exam that has 4 examiners. That's like 2 hours long. And it's also a written exam. So you have to pass all of that. And then, yeah, and then, but the journey and what you really gain from it is not this title. Like, it really doesn't mean much. Not a lot of people know what it is, but I've definitely leveraged it, and it sounds really good, you know. But it really is, for me, the confidence that I gained in seeing someone go headfirst into the boards and being out there supporting them, getting them off, and then assessing them and treating them and managing that injury from, you know, that onset. Like, that's where the depth of confidence and that I've created, and calmness with that privilege of working at this high level has been from surviving, basically. Like, I did it, and it all worked out, and everyone's fine. And
so when you say that Christy, what was her name? Wilshire, she kind of suggested this would be good for you. Was it that easy to become part of the board, one of the board members of the CSMTA?
Yeah, it was, because there's not a lot of people. Again, it's that whole opportunities dressed in overalls and looking like hard work. I think a lot of people just see it as like, oh, just very political and hard work, and I don't have time or energy in that for that. But I skip that process. My mind skips it. It just sees the opportunity and the privilege of this experience that's kind of landed on your lap, that you have the ability to succeed or fail at it. Like, you know, a lot of people don't have these opportunities where they have that ability to give it their 100%, you know. And for me, it felt right, so I did it.
Yeah. I can't help it. I mean, I've worked with the Owls, the Alouettes, and a couple of the Canadians, and there was a real difficulty between me as a therapist, massage therapist, that excelled with rehabilitative and injury prevention and things like that, and they just kind of gravitated to the work because it got results. But there was a real bone of contention between what I did and what the physios, who were, you know, hired by the team, a member of their team, on the sidelines or on the and behind the bench. And do you ever experience, or do you ever experience the sort of like the split, the division between your qualification and they're like a physio? We're physio and we're up here, and you're just
I think definitely. I don't know. I think it helps that my personality is very much not egoic, and I don't need their approval, so I think that energy that I put out supports that, and not needing, and just, again, receiving every opportunity. So whether it is someone that's not certain of, a lot of it stems from lack of education, of knowing what we have under our belts and how we can serve and how we can help, you know. But I feel like over the years, I've been able to create that safe environment to have those conversations where they know you're there for the right reason, they know you're competent. But it's also just knowing that you don't have to be everything. Just because I can tape and I can assess and I can be a sport first responder doesn't mean that I'm the person that needs to be on the ice in that moment. So again, I think it comes from the expectations we have on ourselves and on them. And if it's not fulfilled, we start to get upset about it, and then that compounds the problem, you know. But I think, I don't really feel a lot of that. And then being able to work with Hockey Canada is amazing. Like, it is a beautiful opportunity of collaboration, of knowingness. Like, there's not one person, even, you know, from the captain of the team to the coach to the media to this, there's not one person that isn't a part of the journey and that isn't 100% of the web, you know. So we all know that we're a part of the success, and that helps us thrive.
Yeah, you're all collaborating, you're all working together. I like the word opportunity, that it's not just my thing is something I need to do. It's a big opportunity, one after the other, and you work well with other people.
And that's where you learn, like those hard conversations. Like when you get to that point, you're not learning as much doing your sport massage and doing your craft. You're learning more through that question that someone asks you of like why you're doing something. And then you have to, remove ego and be like, why am I doing this? And being able to have that conversation and grow from it,
Is that something you've always been able to do? That's rare to hear that.
Nope.
By your honesty.
I was very, very, very uncomfortable with many conversations where people were calling me out or whatever, but I read a lot of books on courageous conversations and just different books to be able to explore that side of myself of why I was uncomfortable when someone asked, I used to be the quietest person in the room, and I was not comfortable if some random person talked to me, but I learned to like talk to people in a lineup and just open. When you're open to having those conversations, you receive them better because you're calm and you're breathing and you're
grounded and centered in yourself.
Yeah.
You project some other.
Yeah, and I learned it along the way. Like I can't say the specific book or the specific line, but it's definitely from years of going through different experiences. Again, working with these teams, working with coaches that don't believe in what you're doing, that think you're just rubbing athletes down, like working with, like it's all of those things that help you find better words and find a better opportunity to create a moment to educate people in a way that they want to receive it, Yeah.
And trying to win over the toughest of hearts. I think that was a big one for me. I hear that. When I worked with the athletes, I didn't have much. I wasn't used to this. I wasn't used to having, okay, you got 15 minutes, go. It's like a stand-up comic coming on the stage. It's like, okay, make me laugh. It's like, I would freeze. I didn't know what to do with 15 minutes. I mean, it took me 15 minutes to process what I needed to do in the first place. And that's my time when I kind of start building a groove. And is that like that? Is that the time frame for you when you're working with athletes, or less?
Yeah, it can be less than that. And I was trying to, again, in preparing for this, trying to find, again, the flow state that I've been able to get into with this, this lack of time you have with athletes. And it really, it's no different than the Michael Jordan that's made this many shots in that, and in that moment where he's off balance, he's still able to get there, but he got there from like years of diligence and not perfectionist, but really wanting to be excellent and dedicated to that craft, and I feel like I've been able to go through that process pretty quick. But the psychologists say, so there's, when you first start learning something, there's unconsciously incompetent. You go through phases. You're unconsciously incompetent, then you're consciously incompetent, and then you're conscious of your competence, which a lot of us get to.
Yeah.
And then there's unconscious competence. And I feel like I've been able to bridge that gap, and I'll get to why this relates to the lack of time in performing results. But between conscious competence and unconscious competence is that peak flow state where you've worked so hard on that, like whenever I learn something new, I get so deep into it, but then I'm able to kind of release attachment and expectation from it. And I'm able to just be with it and be curious with it and be in that moment with it and do what then feels right. And I think a lot of people are so consciously competent and trying to validate and measure and use research. And this is interesting, I think, that someone like myself that's working with NHL athletes and Olympic athletes and all of this, that I don't ever have a calling to, like, I don't need to label things. I don't need to say it's a tendinitis, it's a this, it's a this.
Yeah.
I'm able to just be with it and observe my treatments and be within my own body, mind, soul, spirit, and really receiving, like, it doesn't come from the choices that I've made through treatment. They come from research, and they come from instructors, and they come from this deep-rooted knowledge that I could probably report to you on. But it really comes from just like that, not having the expectations on yourself, allowing the athlete to be, allowing yourself to be, and to flow, and to know it's 15 minutes, but again, it's an opportunity of time that we're never going to get back. So I feel like just me being there and being a part of their process, and them choosing to be there, that's a huge opportunity in itself of growth. And then it's just years of really, like, sport massage therapy is an art of being able to load into the body, and you're constantly assessing joint mobility. You're assessing, like, you're receiving so much information from your hands that this decision that happens isn't a conscious decision, but it comes from a conscious competence. Sure. You know what I mean? And then you're able to appreciate and truly see the changes unfolding in their body when it comes to tissue pliability and movement and their nervous system, and the decrease in tone or the increase in vibration when we're upregulating them for a game, you know?
I think it's wonderful that you can transcend and I was going to say ego, but that's not even right. It's just you're transcending the expectation of what's expected of you, and you're just in there for that. The time doesn't seem to be even relevant. You're just trying to look at what is, not trying to fix, not trying to, whatever you're
providing an opportunity, and that's what sport first responding. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I did have to do CPR and AED on someone once, and luckily he survived. But going into, like, every 3 years, you do your sport first responder, and you always go through these crazy scenarios. And I just remember, I think it was the second time I took it, that just like, 'cause it's always like, are you the best person for this? Like, people have that imposter syndrome. But I just had this moment of like I'm the only person right now. So, like, at least I'm giving this person an opportunity to live. At least, I'm going to use my knowledge, and I'm going to do this. And that's the same with, you only have 5 minutes to treat. Like, at least you're giving it a try, and you're giving it 100%. And that athlete, just knowing you're there with them, like, that's the gain more than the hands-on.
Yeah, I know how far that goes. I'm hoping that other people that are going to watch this, or that are watching it right now, can appreciate that, and maybe they would have questions about that later. But I'm still stuck on the actuality of a treatment, whether you're on the behind the bench or in the dressing room, versus being in your clinic. I know you still see people in the clinic. When you do, I could make it either an either or, like whether it's an athlete, in the moment of, or somebody who's come to your clinic and they've got a full hour. What's your focus? Is it, somebody comes to you in pain, they've seen other therapists, they're just frustrated, they're in pain, they're tired, they don't know what to do. Are you focusing on the pain, or are you focusing on, what's your focus when you
I think for me, what's interesting about sport massage therapy is people think we're treating all these acute injuries, but I'm not. Like, majority of, like, for me, so pre and post events, they're not injured when they're, like, there are some injuries at Worlds and that kind of thing, but they're not injured. They don't have pain. So the opportunity lies in what you feel in that moment, and capitalizing on that moment. It's not, the driver isn't pain, and it isn't anything they're really conscious of beyond, I feel tight, which usually is related to their mental disposition in that moment, And then when I see people in clinic, a lot of my players, like off season, I'm seeing them for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And the driver is really either, again, something they don't even know is an opportunity within their body. So my job, I'm an opportunist. I assess and I look for areas where there could be a little more mobility, there could be more motor control, there could be more stability. So I'm looking at those things, and it might just be 5 degrees of right ankle dorsiflexion or right tibial rotation, you know. But for me, it's a lot of, especially say with a goalie, it's very multifaceted. Like how these athletes use their entire physicality and their nervous system and everything is so diverse and amazing in every way, really, from years. But we have them on the ground, you know, like really going into their post position. And sometimes it's, I can't get into this post position to, you know, to save that goal. So for me, it's those little things. So they don't arrive being like, I can't lift my arm here. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can lift my arm. You know, they're like, it's those little minute details. And that's not a lot of people are inspired by that.
What's the detective work that you do to find that? Like they might come in with something else, like I can't get into this, and then you go ended up at, like you said.
So I follow well, I guess like a lot of people, a very thorough health history and just present with every little detail they've shared throughout their entire journey in this vehicle that they've been operating. And then it's going into the selective functional movement assessment. I've utilized that, and I've really dove deep into it with Bernard Hanortbektas. He's out of Vancouver. He's now with the Canucks and has his own clinic, but, you know, a paid mentorship where he really has helped me dive even deeper into why we're using it. And so it really, it highlights areas of opportunity within the body. And then you dive deeper around that region and you start trying to understand, is it a joint mobility restriction? Is it a tissue extensibility? Is it a stability and motor control? Like what problem are you trying to solve? And then it's seeing, like, triaging it and seeing like what all is relating. And then really me focusing on, I think I was telling you this when we first talked, more on the joints and more on the things that they can't work on. But it's using like orthopedic tests, but it's really using that first, the SFMA is the start to the global vision of how this athlete is moving.
The functional movement screen that the Grey Cook.
Yep, so I do that one as well, but not as much. I like Hockey Canada will have me come in and do all the assessments and all the athlete, like we do the SFMA and the FMS. The FMS is really designed more for the strength coach. And it's a little more general, like, can you squat? Can you lunge? Can you do this? If you can't, then we shouldn't be loading you in that position. If there's pain, they refer them to a clinician who then does the SFMA, which is more detailed, more focused, really comes up with where the opportunities truly lie within the athlete.
So I'll make a list at the end so people can actually read up on the difference between functional movement screening and the SFMA. What's the acronym? SFMA?
Selective Functional Movement System.
Yeah. Okay. And the SFMA.
Yeah. And then you always use you're always curious and you're always interested, and it's like, oh, well, what's this about? And I don't label anything right away, and I don't chase.
And I
don't chase just one thing. I believe that we need to gain opportunity in many things every treatment, and then we need the athlete to then use their body how they use it and train it.
And that's, I mean, those are just a few minutes of those two different types of screening and assessment tools. Are there other things that you would use? Now I'm sort of prying into your private clinic treatments.
No, that's okay. What else do I use? Like, I don't know, I've taken 50 plus courses and conferences. Like, there was a time where I did about 8 different things every year. It's that just like wanting to learn more. But again, you need to be able to get into that unconscious competence where you're merging it all in. So sometimes it's like, it's hard for me to be like, I use this one thing, you know? But I definitely would say the driver for me when they're on the table is really how their body is absorbing energy. So I'm assessing a lot of joints and I'm using a lot of techniques to gain mobility at a connective tissue level, a ligamentous level, and a joint level, and a nervous system level. So it's kind of an amalgamation of many different techniques to achieve that. And it's very specific, but yet very creative. And I'm really being in that moment of, of not, again, having an expectation of like, okay, we all know we need posterior glide of the GH joint to achieve flexion. But in that moment, maybe you also need to do a little bit of anterior glide and posterior glide. And like I'm not like, hey, now I need to mechanically go into doing this. And I speak that way because I know there's RMTs online. Yeah. It's kind of taking all of that and then feeling it. Like, what am I feeling? And where it doesn't want to go, and I know it should have the capacity to get there, that's where I find one of these tools, or maybe 5 tools that I've created into one, to gain that. But I think the joint and the connective tissue, the inner tissue around it, so that neurological communication is my big driver. I don't spend a ton of time on muscles and gaining length or gaining, like I truly see and observe if we can work on those areas and get their nervous system down-regulated, the soft tissue, the muscle isn't where the opportunity lies.
Is that through muscle testing that you find out what's upregulated, what's downregulated, what needs to be balanced between those two?
I guess I shouldn't say, like, it's more like a neurological feeling. Like, it's just, so you could call it muscle testing, you could call it hold relax, you could call it PNS, but it really is in that moment seeing that there's a limitation and quickly assessing through that hold relax, assess relax, that maybe a little bit of jostling, maybe I just need to get them to breathe more into the area. And if all of a sudden that range is there, that's not the elephant. That's not the challenge. I'm missing the elephant in the room because I've chosen to focus on this right decreased hip external rotation, when really all it took was a little shake of the leg, a little hold, relax, contract, and all of a sudden it was there.
Yeah.
So assessing and treating and assessing and treating, and yeah.
You're kind of going from global to specific over a period of whatever period of time. But
and it's kind of the things that last a little bit longer that are the drivers, like if you do all of that and it fixes it right away, I'm like, oh, I'm moving on. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Instead of like, I know it's this muscle and I'm going to treat this muscle and I'm going to, and this athlete's going to feel pain and they're going to then equate that to results and to experience. And now they're going to think I'm the best therapist out there, I think a lot of people, that's how they work,
So, I mean, I just want to put something in perspective here, because I know we've had other conversations about treatments, but this is, I mean, I started focusing on all of, the beyond the intake form and how do you find your way from a place to another place, or from somebody coming in with an arm and ending up at their toe. I wanted to put in perspective the actual treatment itself. When you're working, am I right in assuming that you're educating the whole time? You're not just, no one's just receiving a treatment from you, and that you end up kind of giving them homework, right?
Yeah, and I think that the education, I try not to talk too much throughout, because I think you can get, especially with athletes, that paralysis by analysis. Like, they're like, what is my problem? Like, what is my, and I really I don't even like to label it during the assessment. It really comes down to, at the end, what's left behind. It's kind of like, okay, well, this fixed that fixed that, this responded well. So now the true opportunity lies for you in thoracic extension and right rotation. Like, that's the area that we need to work on, and it's engaging them in the knowledge that they are 99% of their solution, and it's what they do that matters, and it matters when they do it, and they're doing it around every time they use their body. They're always, it's that education around, we're always trying to reset, so we're trying to gain mobility and communication in a joint and a range that we are looking to gain. Yeah. Prior to them using that range and learning how to operate it. Then they do their whatever, their workout or their on ice or whatever they do. And then there's this process that they have to spend of regaining anything that they've lost. So we're trying to regain that start state. So all my athletes, I teach them how to assess themselves, how to treat themselves, and how to reassess themselves. Because I think it's very important that they can measure, they know where to invest their time, and they know how to invest it, and they know, did they get results from the time they invested? And that's the athlete. That's why they do everything they do. They want to measure their change. Absolutely. So that's how I educate, and sometimes it's not even educating them, it's talking to their strength coach, and we do it. And the beauty of the athlete is they're surrounded by such a team that they don't even have to know what's going on. They just have to do what we say, and they can have their mind on other things, and they don't need to understand it. They don't need to Yeah,
that's awesome. I love the fact that, I mean, you can't really manage what you can't measure. So you're creating a somatic awareness in them so that they know what they're working with, and they're not just relying on you to.
And not just assuming it's always going to be there, like they could, say it's a goalie, and before they're focusing on their, extension and right rotation of their thoracic spine, they got it to move better, they woke it up, they got the nervous system operating around it, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of the game, someone runs into the net, and they're feeling a little off, they're feeling tight, maybe agitated, when they leave. And in that moment, instead of just being like, oh, I feel tight in that, it's getting them out of that and being like, hey, what am I finding here? So then they go through their assessment and they're like, oh, today I actually I now have limited left rotation of my thoracic spine.
Oh.
Like you're teaching them this stuff, and it's like not knowing, just because you had limitation and we're constantly working because of glove hand, blocker hand, there's always going to be more opportunity in some areas, but it's getting out of their mind that what once was isn't always going to be. So they have to assess it, and in fact, the fact that they were able to highlight that, they're able to stay calm through it, they were able to do their release and focus on it, they gained it. The next morning, they feel good. Whereas if they didn't do that and they generally were like, oh, I'm just going to release everywhere and I'm not going to focus on this opportunity that, this range that was lost during the game, they wake up the next morning, they're like, oh, I don't really know what's happening. Like I'm feeling this. So it's helping them self-treat through assessment and observation versus emotion and versus I feel tight here, so therefore I'll release here.
Yeah, it helps them to decatastrophize a situation.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good word.
I wanted to ask you about more. I mean, we talked at the beginning about, the conferences and blah, 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 and then elemental being, because, when we were talking a week ago, it was a wonderful discovery. And we talked before, and we'd sort of been introduced years and years ago, but I was really excited to find out that you work in an energetic way. You kind of govern your life in an energetic way, despite all of this learning, despite all of the academia that you apply to your work. Is that?
Yeah,
I guess that's how I remember the conversation. Is that something you want
to? No, it is, and that's where kind of the elemental being came about. Was just this awareness of. I think that we're all just thinking of why are we even on this earth? Like, what do we have that, how are we meant to serve? And it's kind of that knowingness of I'm at this point in my life where I know who I am and I know how I serve. And that's kind of through the lens that I see the world and the experiences and observation that I've gone through. And, like I talked about many times where I've been cracked wide open through life. And what that does through these uncomfortable things that arrive outside of our practices, and that makes you realize that you're this spiritual, energetic, elemental being. Like every little thing matters, and it's again that difference between conscious and unconscious, kind of getting to that state where you're not outside of your body anymore, and you're not trying to objectify things and try to force your way through life. Like I've just been able to get into this, what I feel like is like a peak flow state where an athlete might call getting in the zone, But it's really just believing that whatever is meant to arrive will arrive. And the name, the elemental being, came through like after kind of this spiritual journey I had taken. And the name of it came about, but it really is that not being attached to life and to expectations and to what I think is going to serve me in life. It's more that spirituality of just knowing that, I don't know, life is amazing and whatever is meant to be will be. So it's being able to be in that state. I think that's really important for many people to thrive at life, but with ease. And
is that something that you think to me, I register that as I could apply what you're saying to be a better therapist. I could apply it to being a better person for sure. But
I went through a bunch of things. I was going to call it the elemental athlete or the elemental goalie or the elemental therapist. And then I just thought, no, it's the elemental being who just happens to be a massage therapist, who just happens to be the process of being wholesome is the same, but your passion, purpose, and what drives you is different. And I think that's the elemental being is like, yes, use science and be a biohacker and like be, curious around how you can scientifically evolve, but also know that if you just don't feel well that day, it doesn't matter if you put all this time into that. And if you don't know how, if you don't to me, every element is being able to have those crucial conversations, being open to receiving an experience that's uncomfortable and allowing it to break you down and crack you open and knowing that growth occurs. Like to me, the elemental being is literally everyone, and 100% I feel like it helps me be the best version of myself, which in that moment, if it's a good friend, if it's a good, daughter, if it's a good therapist, allowing myself to be in that moment with that person comes from knowing that my environment matters, what I eat matters, what's going on in my mind matters, what's going on in my life all matters. And you can control as much as you want and white knuckle grip on life and drive through. But the challenge is you're going to miss every opportunity that's presenting itself along the way because it's, again, dressed as overalls and looks like work. It's it's good to be cracked open and to expose yourself to the vulnerability of life,
That's a good word, the vulnerability. For now, it's a website, right? That we'll post it.
So now it's just an Instagram platform where it's basically.
It sounds like it's going to be.
It's kind of whatever comes to my mind in that moment. It's not very specific. It's what comes to my mind, and people will get what they want out of it. But it is all around spirituality, research. It's around specific tools to help you be, I guess, the best version of yourself. I'm looking forward to talking more about that. And I'm looking forward to other people experiencing it. This is, I don't want to go too long. I really want to be able to kind of wrap this up and give other people a chance to ask questions. But it's always kind of fun to hear what a therapist or an instructor would issue as a gem or a pearl of wisdom to others that are listening. Is there a thing or some things that you would leave? You prepared me to answer this question, and I asked myself that question before I went to bed last night, and then I asked it again to myself this morning. And this is what I came up with. But I feel like, again, it revolves around our expectations of where we think we should be in life, and whether that's as a person, as a therapist, as whatever. But it's that whole pressure is privilege. So pressure is, you could call it an uncomfortable situation or an opportunity to win a gold medal. It's a situation that is pressure. It doesn't feel comfortable, but it's a privilege to be there and in that moment. And if you can embrace it, and harness this opportunity through the lens of passion, curiosity, and creation, and leverage your arousal and desire and excitement around this opportunity without expectations, the results will just arrive. And it's kind of that knowingness that you deserve to be where you are, you're enough, and to fully be able to receive the opportunity. And I don't know, I guess it's that the time to arrive is now. And that's letting go of fears, letting go of anything that doesn't serve you, and just to be there to arrive, whether it's to just be in that moment with your patient and you've arrived, you know?
Yeah.
And you're being present, and it's just never stop having that wild love for learning through the interesting curiosity lens.
Right. I love that. Yeah.
And it's not just being a therapist, it's like getting to know yourself. And I think we all need to dive deeper into our own being. And that is truly what's going to help our patients at the end of the day versus taking another course. And
it's starting to cycle back to the 4 phases of competence and competence. What was that book you were referring to?
Just the whole unconscious incompetence, conscious. So it wasn't a book, it was like a podcast that I'd listened to a while ago where he was relating to what psychologists say around the like phases of learning. And it's kind of getting into that, unconscious competence. But you get that through, I don't know, just through believing that pressure is privilege. And
it sounds like very much like that unconscious competence. You've transcended everything else to that place where you just are. You're just letting it be and letting it flow and letting it happen within you. And that's very much like that. What you were just saying, the pressure is privilege. You're there right now. You're the person that they came to, and just
you deserve to be there, and they deserve to have you as your organic, wholesome self, and they deserve to be their own. And I think that's what athletes would say is different about me or my patients or friends. Therefore, I have no expectations of them. I'm just there in that moment, and I'm in this great state where I don't need anyone's approval. I don't need anything to come of any discussion. Whatever comes. And I think when you can slowly, but that's through lots of spiritual work, lots of breath work, I spend 2 hours by myself every morning getting to know me and reading, and it is getting into that depth of knowledge around topics, but then to be able to just be like, no, I'm just going to be with it,